Hi, welcome to Teach With Me. I am Miss Jen. Today we're going to be talking about apples. I have two projects for you. One has to do with math and art, and one has to do with language arts. And both of them are about apples. So today, let's begin. You may notice on the board behind me, I have a pattern that I've made with apple slices. And so that's what we're doing today, but we're tying it into patterns. Patterns are so important, and it's something I don't believe is addressed deeply enough with the Common Core standards. And so I always did this in September, as I'm sure a lot of teachers do Apple units in September. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to introduce what a pattern is. And so I'm going to start by talking to the kids about patterns, and I'm introducing them with sound. So I'm going to do something like this. I'm going to say, and I'll say, what's going to be next? And then hopefully they hit their laps. I'll probably start it a little simpler and just do an A-B pattern. And I'll ask them to tell me what's going to come next. And I'll say that is a pattern. It's something that repeats. It is a unit that repeats, and you can do it with motion. So then the next thing I might do is I might have them stand up, sit down, stand up, sit down, stand up, sit down. And they get tired, so you don't do that for too long. But then I'll say, the last time they stand up, I'll say, okay, what's next? And I'll say how, and they'll say sit down, and I'll say, how do you know it's sit down? And they'll say, because it repeats. And then I'll introduce it with colors, and I'll show them, I'll say red, green, red, green, red, green, red, and then I'll have them tell me what's next, green. And so once they kind of have the idea of what a pattern is, I'm going to introduce this project. Now this project assumes that you have already talked about apples a little bit, and they know that apples come in red, in green, and in yellow. And hopefully that's been introduced because they need a little context. And I'll say to them, today we're going to be doing a project, and the only colors you're allowed to use are apple colors. What are the apple colors? And they'll say red, green, yellow. So I usually do this the first month of school. And I had kindergarten, first grade most often. I have taught other grades, but those were the ones I did most often. So when I tell you this can be done, it can be done. But you need to set yourself up for success. And so what I normally do is at recess time when the kids are out, or at lunchtime, I'll go cut the apples, depending on when you're planning to start it throughout the day. I will set up a station, and I had a long counter in my classroom, and so I have myself in the middle, and I have a student on the left and a student on the right with the station set up, and on how I wanted them to paint. I'm going to have a paper plate, and I'll show you this in a moment, a paper plate with red paint, yellow paint, and green paint already set out for them. But what I don't want is I don't want the kids touching these apples, because after a little while, they're going to get slippery with all the paint. The kids are going to get paint on their hands, and then they're going to do this and just mix that paint up, and now you have a bigger mess. So I always put a handle on my apples. You can do that with popsicle sticks, or you can do this with like little knives. You just stick it in, and it makes it really easy and keeps their hands from getting dirty. So I'm going to get my station all set up, and what I'm making my pattern on is a sentence strip. And so I have a sentence strip right here, and I am going to show you my station now. So here we go. I'm going to turn this down. Now from this point on, you're going to, for this lesson, you're not going to see me. You're only going to hear me. So what I do first is I have the kids write their name on the back of the sentence strip they're going to do before they begin painting, because otherwise we will forget, and then we won't be able to figure out whose is whose. And then I'm going to flip it over. I did this one backwards, and that's okay. That is okay. Anyway, so I'm going to decide on my pattern, and I'm going to tell them you can only choose the color, 2 colors or 3 colors, but once you decide, you cannot change it. So I'm going to start for this pattern. I'm going to start with red, and we're going to tell them to start all the way over here on the end, and I'm going to go red, and then I'm going to say, okay, my next color, I think I want to do yellow. So I'm going to do yellow. And I think I'm only going to do red and yellow. So if my pattern is red, yellow, I cannot introduce green on my pattern. That one's not going to stick very well because I did that on plastic. Anyway, that is all right. I normally do a long sentence strip, but I did not have any. There are no teacher stores within 2 hours of where I live, so everything I'm having to order. Anyway, so this is my pattern. It does not take long. You can see you can pull kids out during centers, excuse me, whenever they're doing anything independent. I do then, I'm gonna move this aside because I want to show you my next activity that goes with this. After this, what I'm going to do, I'm going to move these up a little bit, is I'm going to give the students something that looks like this. We are going to introduce patterns that we label. So a green, now this does not have to be done the same day. It can be if you've already done all of the background information, right? You've done all of that work already. Let me put this here so we can see it better. I'm going to teach them that if you have 2 units in a pattern, you're going to have 2 letters, A, B, A, B, A, B, A, B, A, B, etc. The first time I introduce this, I show them, and we go through several samples, and then they copy the patterns, and then the last one they try to do one on their own. Now this is a really good initial assessment to see whether or not they understand patterns. You can look at this and say, okay, they did not do a pattern, so we need more practice with that. Once you feel like they are good, this can then go into an independent center and they can do this on their own. You can assign them, put it in a tray or however you do your independent centers. I'll show you how I do mine in videos upcoming. But anyway, this could be something they do on their own once they understand patterns. And that is it for that lesson. All right, the next part of our lesson for apples, and this most likely is not being done the same day, unless you are doing apple tasting that day, then it certainly can be. I usually did do the apple tasting the same day I did the apple painting because otherwise I'm having to get extra apples. Now, I understand that you might not be able to get that many apples, it is a cost investment. But one trick you could do is you could ask parents if every child could bring in 1 apple, and then you have enough for the painting and you have enough for the tasting. So what I would do is I have one of those apple slicers and I would just cut them into pieces, and we would take a taste of a red apple, a green apple, and a yellow apple. And the kids, we would vote and do a little graph on what kind of apples the kids like the best. And for that one, and I should have brought that one, I did not do that, but I would make a little graph, and they would take their die cut apples. If they like the red apples the best, they put the red apple next to on the graph, or you could just do a check mark. It doesn't matter. Depends on if you want to display it or not. But that's what we would do. First we would taste them, then we would graph them, then we would brainstorm words that would describe the different kinds of apples. So if you see the board behind me, and it would be cuter than this if I was doing it in a classroom, because I already had a board made, a pre-laminated board, because I did this every year. But it would have all of the words that the kids would come up with, and I would have it sorted under categories for the 5 senses. So what do they notice? What can they see with their apples? What can they hear? What do they taste? What can they smell? And what does it, which one am I missing? Feels, sounds, looks, tastes, smells. And then these are some of the words that kids come up with over the years. I see mushy, if they have a mushy apple. Smooth, and these are under feels. Sounds, crunchy, juicy. Looks, red, yellow, green, shiny, small, round. For taste, yummy, sour, sweet, juicy. Smells, fresh and fruity. And there are obviously more. But what I would do with that is I would then have the children have something like this, where I have the prompt already pre-filled out. If it's kindergarten, if it's first grade or second grade, you don't need to do that. For kindergarten, they're going to choose one of those words to finish and then put their period at the end and then draw a picture. First grade, if you don't have the prompt, then you simply say, tell me, for me, I would write the prompt on the board so that those kiddos who can't do it yet can see it, because there will be some firsties that don't know how to write the sentence out yet. But I do sentence writing practically from the beginning. They don't understand what a sentence is at the beginning, and that's okay. But I do it like this with a dotted font at the beginning, so they can see, practice their letter structure, as well as continually repeating the idea that words go together to make thoughts. So, and this is a font that I bought a long time ago. I'll tell you the font on the next, or at the end of this, I'll add it to my notes at the end. Anyway, and then once they have this up here, they trace it with their pencil and they choose one of the words that we have displayed to fill in their sentence. And then we've been teaching the dots, the punctuation at the end at this point. And then they're going to draw a picture. So if they said my apple is red, then they're going to draw a red apple. We always want their pictures to match their words. All right. You can also do it in a journal. Now, I have ordered a journal with the way I like it to look. This is not it, but it's same idea. This would be for the older kids. For kindergarten, I really want this drawing piece. This drawing piece helps me see whether they're understanding what we're talking about. So that's one reason that drawing piece is really important. It also lets me see growth over time. So I do have some journals coming because we'll be using them as we go through. Anyway, that is it for this lesson. I have more Apple lessons coming up. I hope you found this useful. I hope you found something that you were encouraged by, inspired by, or blessed by.